very welcome, and I hope we're going to have fun together. Right, but before we begin, I must warn you all, mums, dads, boys and girls, one and all, that my tour today contains stories, details about murder, gimme do, execution, torture.
Situated near modern London landmarks like the mobile phone and the Shard is a world-famous building constructed in 1066 by William the Conqueror, the Tower of London. After defeating King Harold at the Battle of Hastings in 1066, William the Conqueror wanted to show his new Saxon subjects the power of the Normans. He decided to build a tower at the site of the former Roman city of Londinium. Today, the Tower of London is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is located within easy walking distance of several London Underground sites, the nearest being Tower Hill. There are reminders of the tower's Norman origins everywhere. Once filled with water many meters deep to ward off attackers, the tower's moat is now filled with grass. Today, the Tower of London is no longer a fortress or a royal residence. It is, however, home of the crown jewels. As part of the entrance price, visitors can join one of the tours hosted by the Yeoman Warders.
That my tour today contains stories, details about murder, gimme do, execution, torture. You're getting a little bit too excited. Executions are on a Sunday, you're lucky. William was crowned King William I of England on Christmas Day that same year, but he had to continue to fight his newly conquered subjects because he didn't take too kindly to Norman domination. William was looking for somewhere to impress and overawe the citizens of London, so he chose a site just inside the eastern city wall where once an old Roman fort had stood. In fact, within the ancient Roman established city of Londinium. That was used as a royal residence right up until the year 1603. Last monarch to live here, King James I. The crown jewels, the royal regalia, they've been here since 1303. The Royal Mint was located in these walls. It was the site of the first Royal Observatory. It was a Royal Armoury. It was a Royal Records Office. It was the Royal Menagerie or Zoo. All the animals given as gifts to our kings and queens, they were kept here until they were eventually moved to Regent's Park in 1835. You will know it as London Zoo.
Yeoman Hardy pointed to a spot just outside the wall where executions took place.
Their heads up there by means of the block and the executioner's axe. Now, the first victim was a man called Simon Sudbury, and he was the Archbishop of Canterbury, and he was murdered up there at the hands of peasants in 1381 for daring to introduce a poll tax. 7 years later, in 1388, the first legal execution on Tower Hill was that of Sir Simon Burley. And by remarkable coincidence, the last victim in 1747 was another Simon. Anybody here today called Simon? Snow would kneel down, placing his neck on a block of oak. For the executioner to bring the axe crashing down upon him, he would have to give him a very specific word and signal. Something historically like this. Ready! The executioner would then bring down his axe, hopefully beheading his victim with one stroke. The executioner would then pick up the severed and still bleeding head and hold it aloft for all to see. Turning to the assembled crowd, he then proclaimed, "Behold, the head of a traitor. So die, all traitors. God save the king, and the crowd would cheer. All would be traitors. The headless corpse was taken down, placed on a handcart, brought back into the tower, where it was buried in an unmarked grave, a traitor's grave, in St. Peter at Vincula. Which is stood on, this is called Mint Street, because it was here from about the year 1279 to 1810 that the vast majority, not all, but the majority of the coins of the realm were designed and produced. Village community here of about 140 people, yeah. That's called the Sallyport or Byward Postern. That's our royal entrance. That's where royalty would enter into the tower, because they'd travel along the River Thames, tie up alongside where the steps are, and with little difficulty they'd gain access through those gates. Prisoners held within it. We've even had two Catholic saints actually, St. Thomas More, St. John Fisher. So if there's anybody here from the Catholic faith, this is where they were held. To the scaffold. And he realised that Ketch was to be his executioner, he froze. Why? Well, this was the man who had drunkenly botched the beheading of his good friend, Lord Russell, taking 3 strokes of the axe to sever the head from the body. Do your work well, Monmouth instructed Ketch, and do not use me as I hear you hacked my poor Lord Russell. Oh, and he glanced the top of Monmouth's head. The crowd went, ooh! Oh, God. The second blow landed squarely between the shoulder blades, and the crowd went, ah! But the third blow failed to finish the job, and the crowd began to boo and roar in disapproval. Give me a boo! Boo! And get on with the bloody job, or he'd be next. 1 to 2 blows later, and the head was still attached by the gristle and the sinew. Are we enjoying this, kids? Cutting and sawing and slicing through the skin, the tissue, the sinew. Is it just me and the children that are enjoying themselves? Instant task for this macabre sitting. After which Monmouth's head and body were then buried beneath the altar of the chapel, where they remain to this day. The road which he now stood on is called Water Lane. Because up until about the year 1275, the River Thames actually washed against this inner wall behind you. When this outer wall was built, the river was moved back and the roadway was raised some 15 feet. That's why we call it Water Lane. There's gates, give me new. Right, it was built on the orders of King Edward I because it required a safer and more useful entrance into the tower. Because rather than travel through the narrow and packed streets of London, where convoys could be attacked, stores stolen, prisoners set free, he decided to use the River Thames as a highway. So at high tide, boats could pass through this gate and unload their cargo in safety. Therefore, it was originally known as the Watergate. To be hanged, drawn and quartered was a man called William Wallace, a Scotsman from Braveheart. Thank you. Lose my voice.
Oh, that makes more sense.
I went down 3%.
And this is the village green of the Tower of London. Like I said, we're a village community here of about 140 people. If it looks like a house and it's lived in, it probably is. In this delightful country with their cricket pitches and their duck ponds, their pubs, their maypoles, their Morris dancers and their crime-fighting vicars. We have something quite unique and special on our village green, because over there we've got our very own private execution side. Give me an R. There, see an L-shaped building. Tudor structure built in 1540. That's the King's house, yeah? The King's house. King doesn't live there, but it's the King's house. Should he want to, he can stay there. But like I said, we're a royal palace, but we're no longer a royal residence. High status prisoners held in there over the years. I mentioned Simon Fraser earlier, yeah? Last to be beheaded on Tower Hill. He was held in there prior to being executed up there. Queen Catherine Howard, Henry VIII's fifth wife. She was held in there at a much earlier period prior to being executed there. William Penn, another famous prisoner to be held in the top floor of that house for his offensive writings. And even so, as a prisoner, he compiled his controversial pamphlet, No Cross, No Crown, where that bell was made. It was, isn't that incredible? And when we gave you that bell, it was in one piece. And you broke it. Just like you did our language. I was imprisoned here, actually in the White Tower, on the 15th of August, 1100. A man called Ranulph de Flambard, he was the Bishop of Durham. Our last prisoner to be executed here at the Tower of London was on the 15th of August, 1941. Joseph Jacobs, a German spy. Yeah? In between those two dates, we've had over 8,000 documented prisoners that we know of. 31 escaped, 48 were tortured, including one woman. She was called Anne Askew, tortured by King Henry VIII, yeah? 365 prisoners were executed, vast majority of them outside the walls on Tower Hill. 7 were beheaded over here on Tower Green, 5 of them were women, 3 of them were Queens of England, and 15 men were executed by a firing squad, yeah? The vast majority in the 20th century. 15 members of the royal family buried in there, 3 Queens of England, 2 Catholic saints. James Scott, Duke of Monmouth, had his head stitched on. Remember him? Yeah? He's buried beneath the altar. Okay, in there. Make sure you go in there. Beautiful space. Further to the right, we've got the Waterloo block, standing on the site of the Grand Storehouse that was destroyed by fire in 1841. That building there was erected as a barracks in 1845 for as many as 1,000 soldiers of the Tower garrison. It's now the location of the Jewel House, the Crown Jewels. If you haven't seen them, you can get to see them by way of the large doors beneath the large clock there, yeah? Now, if you haven't seen them, they are the real deal. There's nothing fake in there. They're the same jewels that were used on His Majesty's coronation, yeah? We, the Yeoman Warders, know this to be true because the vast majority of us were there, okay, as his bodyguard. Scaffold site here behind me. Like I said, only several people were beheaded here. 3 of them were Queens of England. Probably the most famous of them all, on the 19th of May 1536, was Queen Anne Boleyn, second wife of King Henry VIII and mother of Queen Elizabeth I. Now, Anne was tried and found guilty here at the Tower on trumped-up charges of incest, adultery, witchcraft, treason. And she was to be beheaded here on the green, not with the axe, which she feared greatly, but in the French manner, with a 2-handed sword in our chapel. Go in and have a look. 1542, the axe unusually fell twice on the same day. This time the victim was Queen Catherine Howard, Henry VIII's 5th wife and her lady-in-waiting. Both before and during her marriage to Henry VIII. Was to be, however, an affair with Thomas Culpeper that proved to be her undoing, and on the scaffold she spoke to her executioner saying, "I die the Queen of England, but was rather die the wife of Thomas Culpeper." In admission of guilt or expression of love, we shall never know. Carry out the same duties day to day, century to century, up to the present date. We're also extraordinary members of the King's Bodyguard, for one of the oldest royal bodyguards in the world. You would have seen us present at His Majesty's coronation, and you would have seen us guarding Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's body in Westminster Hall. Good Conduct Medal. Otherwise known as the Undetected Crime Medal. I was never caught. Number of the yeoman body today is 35, and we make up all branches and services of His Majesty's Armed Forces, Army, Navy and Air Force. Why are we called beefeaters? Are you ready for this?
Yes.
This is from the horse's mouth. We don't know. We haven't got a clue. We actually don't know. It's a nickname. Now, we don't know what the origins of that nickname are. We've got theories. King's Bodyguard. Medieval period, maybe we're paid in beef. Beef's very expensive, it's very scarce, you know. King's bodyguard, maybe we tasted the beef from the king's table. It could be poisonous. We have to protect the king, yeah? No chance I'm eating that. No way. Some people, think we're called beef eaters because we drink a lot of gin.
Nos sentamos ahí en el río, ¿ven?
The queue for the crown jewels is very long, and visitors are not allowed to take photos or film. So I decided not to visit on this occasion. This is the Fusiliers Museum, which we'll visit later. And these are some of the residences that Yeoman Warders and their families live in.
And they call you a privateer. So what do they call you? Privateer. That's right, a privateer. Now, as a privateer, you'd have to be able to prove that you had the King or Queen's approval. So you'll have to carry with you something called a letter of marque.
Invisible ink. Secret message. But how do you read the invisible ink? You hold it up to a... What kind of light? There's no electric light there. There's no UV or electric light there. And they climb down, scale the outer walls down and into the boat. And John Gerrad escaped after torture and was never caught. He died in Rome at the age of 72.
On your visit, you'll probably see one of the famous ravens. The legend states that if the ravens leave the tower and the monarchy will fall.
In the inner ward of the Tower of London, this is the oldest part of the tower. To your front stands William's Norman keep, known as the White Tower, the oldest and largest in the complex. Everything that is built around it is built to defend that. Everything that is here because of that. That before you is the Tower of London. Entrance is on the south side.
This reminds us of the tragic tale of the princes of the Tower, held here by their uncle, the future Richard III. More about that later. The White Tower has a total of 202 steps. There are many more to go yet. Ever wondered where some of those diplomatic gifts get taken? Here's your answer. Past monarchs and their swords. As Warden Hardy explained earlier, the Tower of London was notorious over the centuries as a prison. This setup shows how traitors were dealt with in the first part of the 20th century. And here are some gruesome means of torture used centuries before.
Really? Yeah, but they like were able to bridge the London Bridge. Yeah.
Did they have houses?
Yes,
on
the
it?
London Bridge.
Come on, I didn't think.
At the Tower of London, there is a museum dedicated to the Royal Fusiliers. The late Queen's grandfather, George V, was the Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Fusiliers. Today, that honour goes to one of his grandsons, the current Duke of Kent. Fusiliers captured these busts of Mussolini and Hitler in Berlin at the end of World War II. Finally, we head towards the Tower of London's church, the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula. It is beneath this altar that the unfortunate Duke of Monmouth and Anne Boleyn are buried. These are memorial plaques for past Yeoman Warders. This plaque is to many notables buried here, including Sir Thomas More, the man for all seasons, George Boleyn, and Thomas Cromwell. Next on our tour is the notorious Bloody Tower. It is so named because this is the last place the two princes of the tower were seen before they were murdered.
Edward IV and Queen Elizabeth, a 12-year-old son of Edward, 9-year-old Prince Richard, and their 5 sisters. On the 9th of April, King Edward dies. His eldest son, Prince Edward, travels to London to be crowned king. On the way, his uncle Richard takes control of the young king and takes him to the tower. His mother and younger brother go to Westminster Abbey for safety. In May, Edward's younger brother, Richard, joins him at the tower. On the 6th of July, Richard III is crowned king instead of his nephew. Two princes are annexed.
Built by Henry III and his son Edward I, the medieval palace has been recreated for visitors to the Tower of London.
Today is due to Edward and his father, King Henry III. Together they expanded the fortress and created an impressive new palace within it. As you explore the medieval palace, you will see how it might have looked in the 1200s. You might even bump into one of its royal residents.
one of these cloaked figures holding up a handkerchief had been Billy! We had disguised him as a woman, and thus he escaped from the Tower of London, and we both lived happily ever after. May it be!
Hello! I found it! Oh, excuse me, I thought you were on Tower Bridge, I went all the way up there. I thought you were on the Shard, I went all the way up there. I'm a bit tired. Hang on. Right, good. I found the information in a footnote here about Catalina of Montreal, and it says that she left, went to Granada, and then disappeared.
And?
That's all I've got.
We already knew that.
Oh, bum.
And we've just met, Winifred Maxwell.
Oh, Lady Nithsdale.
Yes.
She is in that book. What a woman, the ideal wife. Loyal, womanly.
After 5 hours, I left the Tower of London exhausted. But it is excellent value for money. £34.80 for adults, £17.40 for children under 16, and reduced rates for seniors. I definitely visit again.